Hey guys, open world PvP. Let's talk about it a little bit. I don't think it's any secret to anybody who PvPs in New World that open world PvP, it feels kind of dead. And it's a bummer because for a lot of people, the open world content, the open world PvP is really where the game was shined the most, right? A lot of people made characters on Fresh Start just to get in all that fun open world PvP that happens for the first few days, maybe the first week, couple weeks, and then it tapers off again as things settle into the war meta and everyone's at max level, and the open world PvP, it just really dies off. I have some ideas on how we can solve this problem. Most of you probably aren't going to be aware of this, but Dark Age of Camelot, one of the original 3-faction PvP games, still regarded to this day as one of the best experiences for PvP in an MMO, recently launched a new private server called Eden. I've been playing on it a little bit, and it got me thinking about some stuff that we could bring to New World, very inspired by Dark Age of Camelot, that would definitely get the open world PvP popping again. If you know anything about that game, you know that there is this special dungeon called Darkness Falls. And the way you gain access to this special dungeon is your faction. It's there. It's also, right, one of 3 factions. If your faction owns the most territory, relics, forts in the frontiers, etc., then your faction gains access to this dungeon. And it's not like the standard dungeons we're getting in this game, right? The little 5-man instance things. It's more of kind of like an open world type of dungeon, but only your one faction has access to it at a time. Now, what happens is that people are constantly fighting over this because they want access to it. It has the highest experience rate. It drops basically like the best kind of stuff. You're going to make the most amount of gold and money inside of this dungeon, and that makes it highly sought after, right? It's not enough just to include, some gathering bonuses here and there if you're flagged. That's not real incentive, in my opinion. All that's really done is get a lot of PvEers to flag up, and then they get very mad, and they talk about it in global chat whenever somebody kills them while they're farming in their luck gear flagged, right? And it's like, don't flag then. But essentially, the flagging system hasn't done the job that they want it to do. None of these bonuses have really encouraged the real open world PvP that it was supposed to. Now, we can look at the map here and see that there is only one fort currently being contested. First Light, as we all know, right, it's got the global refining yield bonus. That is the one fort that tends to get a little bit of action fairly regularly if you're on a bit of a pop-in server. But you look at all the other ones, usually there is nothing going on at any of the other forts because the bonuses aren't really enough either. My proposition here is basically borrowing a little bit of inspiration from Dark Age of Camelot. And instead of these forts working the way they do with just these bonuses, you can leave the bonuses, no big deal. But what if, and the devs seem to love pumping out dungeons and expeditions, right? They don't want to give us new PvP modes. They could just copy paste some assets to give us a capture the flag or something. They don't really seem too keen on doing that. It's not on the roadmap. They answered it in the video and said, nope, there's no new modes planned or anything like that, right? Just cross server. That's the only thing they're really planning. Now, what if, similar to Dark Age Camelot, you made it to where whichever realm, not the cities, but these open world forts, right? The cities, those are kind of, we get the wars, right? And the wars are gated. They're very timed, like you get this one little period of time, you do the little war. It's not what we're looking for. We're talking about open world action here, right? How to get the open world PvP popping. What if these forts, whichever faction controlled most of the forts, right? The majority of the forts gained access to a new dungeon that was very Darkness Falls like, right? Whereas a big dungeon, lots of people could be in there farming, making good money and everything. And then when it flips, which could happen at any time because it's just control over these open world forts, not timed wars or anything. Whenever it flipped and a new faction gains control over it, that new faction, now they have access to it. They get to go into that open world dungeon and wipe everybody out that was in there farming from the previous faction. This is what happens in Dark Age of Camelot. It's super fun. People still love that game, right? Like, I went back and played it, and it's not a massive nostalgia reason that I'm enjoying the game. I only ever played the game a little bit back in its heyday. It's not like EverQuest for me where it's all nostalgia, right? They have really good PvP systems in that game. So, to summarize, we already have the 3-faction system. We already have the open world forts. The devs already like pumping out dungeons instead of other things. All we need is the big open world style dungeon that whoever controls most of these open world forts, they're the only ones that have access to it at a time. It's able to flip at any time because it's just the open world fort control. It would also, right, it would get people PvPing in the open world at all of these forts because you finally have a real incentive, something that is worth chasing after and doing all of that for, instead of just a little luck bonus, right? And so I just see this as like such an easy solution to implement into this game. Like the foundation of most of the stuff is already there. Let me know in the comments, guys. Do you love my idea? Do you hate my idea? I'm sure like there'll be a little bit of, you know, some PvE players not really liking it. I don't really understand. Sometimes the PvE players, it feels like they don't want PvPers to have anything. It's okay. Like your mutations is already like, yeah, it's so much more rewarding than any of the PvP modes that we get to do. You let us have like the one dungeon that's more PvP focused and, you know, fill it full of like good gear, umbral shards, a high gold, you know, per hour type of rating, you know, something that is comparable to running mutations, but this time for PvPers, and it's more challenging a bit, right? Because we have to compete with the other players. You can get wiped out in the middle of it. It's still not going to be like the thing the PvE players want to do. I think it's okay. It'd be fairly separated enough. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, though. Love the idea, hate the idea. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate the YouTube members and the patrons that support me being able to do this. Appreciate you guys. Catch you in the next one.